Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I have a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
and today we are back together again to talk about the season finale of Loki and all the implications that it has on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. On our previous episode, we broke down Black Widow, so you can hear our thoughts on that if you want to. And of course, we have shared our thoughts so far on the series, and I think both of us are very excited about this episode.
Yeah, and in general, what this episode means for the future.
Yes.
Indeed,
It feels
yes.
like, all of our talking actually means something.
Yes,
Maybe
exactly.
we're on to something.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree. And I think it even somehow, I feel like maybe watching WandaVision will be even less frustrating now and I don't know. We'll get to that. Let's
It does kind of retroactively maybe make me feel a little better about WandaVision.
And let's just get it out there. I'm not considering Ralph Bohner, them basically retconning what they said about Ralph Bohner somehow through these. That does not seem out of the possibility realm for me. And it being almost like the Marvel long con. Oh yeah, we'll tell them it's Ralph Bohner. We'll pretend like it was just never a thing. And then we'll retroactively come back with something later. I mean, it just seems like that's just almost too easy to do. That why wouldn't they? Even if they hadn't planned it that way, why wouldn't they pretend like they had and fix that?
I think you're right. And if you want to learn more about Quicksilver and maybe his alternate variant Ralph Bohner, you can always head over to our good friends at Kapow Comics at 4047 East Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. They have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and even special guest appearances throughout the year. And of course, we always implore you to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment in the section below, so you're up to date on all the cool content we have at 2for1 Studios that we release weekly.
Indeed.
But yes, Daniel. But yes, Ralph Bohner. I'm really. We'll get into that in a second. Let's kind of start going through this. So, first few things. Kate Herron directed this episode. She's directed all the episodes this season, and this one was very exciting for a lot of reasons. And the big one, obviously, is that we finally get Loki and Sylvie to the main guy behind the curtain, the Oz, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it ends up being, of course, a variant of Kang the Conqueror. What's his name?
He Who Remains.
Yes.
Which is just in the comics. That's even another name for Kang.
Yes. He's been
or a
called,
name he went by at one point or something.
right. And we even highly speculated last episode that with all these little Easter eggs and X, Y, and Z that we would kind of get to the point where maybe Kang would make an appearance. And we knew that he was coming in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania here pretty soon. So all the seeds were planted, and this is, I feel like, one of the first times, at least I felt this way, we got it right, because WandaVision kind of kept subverting things.
Well, and also I feel like it's the first time I've kind of had my expectations met with the finale.
Right.
I think of any of the shows in terms, not just in terms of was it a good episode, but in terms of what changed in the MCU because of this, and what ripple effects will we see after this. And I think in WandaVision we were hoping for a bigger impact from that finale, a bigger, we were hoping for a lot of what this did and to happen at the finale, the breaking open of the multiverse or whatever.
Right.
And so I think there's a universe level satisfaction to this finale. That's we're finally officially starting the Kang saga.
Right.
Or in the Kang gauntlet, whatever you want to call it. And so it's we haven't actually said his name yet. That is actually interesting. That Kang, the word has not been said, but it is. We know. I mean, he says that I've been called a conqueror. It was great. That was great.
As soon as he said the conqueror, it was literally like the Leonardo meme. I went, yes, like this.
Yeah, pointing at the TV.
I was tapping Katie's leg. They said it, conquer.
I know. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I was just I know. And so I think there's a satisfaction to the whole series of Loki, because they took the whole series to build to this. moment, this episode.
Yeah.
And they took, and what is nice is that they took the whole episode to do it. It wasn't like part of the episode, then a bunch of action sequences or whatever. It really it was a very talky episode, really dialogue heavy for the most part, other than kind of the Sylvie Loki fight, but and some of the stuff in the TVA. But it was still, I don't know. I think just because of the fact that I know we're cracking open the next, epic chapter of superhero movies. And even just knowing the direct consequences that we're going to have in Spider-Man No Way Home, which we're still all just begging for the trailer for. And they even announced that they did an official announcement for that new action figure of it's such a tease, right? It's like, yeah, he has Doctor Strange powers. We're not releasing the trailer yet. Why would we do that? You know what I mean? It's just little bastards.
I think that I'm not sure those were supposed to be leaked yet, but yes.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
yes,
well, yeah, it just still feels like, again, all of these theories and ideas that we've been talking about really since the Infinity War ended. As far as what's next, and it's still wild to me that what was Endgame 2019?
Yes.
Okay, it was. I mean, that's 2 years. We're 2 years we're 2 years past the Infinity War ending. Right, and I know Spider-Man Far From Home was an epilogue, but I don't know. I actually watched that. We watched that recently, and it's still not my favorite. I still think Homecoming is much better.
Well, it was still a couple months after Endgame, so it's still been 2 years since we've had this resolution. So
no, yeah, well, and I'm just saying No Way Home kind of felt or Far From Home felt a little tacked on to the story, and
sure,
nothing happened in that movie that necessarily is going to affect anything else in the MCU.
Right.
Other than Peter's personal journey.
And there was some tease though about the multiverse in that movie.
Oh no, that is what's fun to me, because Catherine never saw it, so we watched it recently. And I still maintain that the whole reveal that Mysterio is a committee is boring, and I still hate that it's a group of people, and it just kind of deflates. I'm blanking on the actor's name that plays him.
Jake Gyllenhaal.
Jake Gyllenhaal. It just kind of makes him very insignificant as a individual character, and then it's like, oh, but then we wasted Jake Gyllenhaal like this. I mean, he's a really good actor. I feel like, and we're wasting Mysterio as a character like this.
I still don't think he's dead. But before we get into
I don't either.
The multiverse and the implications, I do want to back up a little bit and talk about Loki, Sylvie in this episode, and He Who Remains. So you brought up an interesting point a minute ago, and one of these things was that it's a lot of talking going on. And we've kind of said in our past reviews here that a lot of this show is talking, a little bit of action that pushes him to the next talking scene, right? Loki is somebody who is always negotiating his way out of something. He's scheming, he's making these things. And one thing I thought was really cool about this episode was that a lot of this is literally Jonathan Majors as He Who Remains doing a giant long monologue. And it's just them as us, the audience, listening to him. And we see this character who is charismatic, who is on the brink of insanity. It seems like he's been alive for lifetimes, he says, millions of lifetimes. And it was this great vehicle to kind of get to know the next Thanos level event, or at least get to know a fraction of him. And there's this great thing of there's a phrase that says, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the other forms of government. And so there's this great thing about the TVA being like, okay, it's designed because of this multiverse war of all these other Kang variants, and he is the last one that remains. And basically, hey, you either run this with me, or we'll have another war, and I will end up in the exact same spot anyway. And the other guys are much, much more worse than I am. And it's just this great Sophie's choice. It's a great, I don't know. Let's just kind of unpack this. What's your thoughts on this? I got some ideas.
Yeah, I really, first of all, I thought he really, I didn't know what to make of Jonathan Majors as Kang. I mean, I have not really seen much of him, but I thought he was great. I thought he, and what's cool is I'm expecting a very different performance next time we see him based on whatever reality that Kang comes from. And that's awesome that we're going to kind of get who knows how many versions of him as Kang.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's awesome. I think that's exciting. And I mean, he impressed me. I thought his acting was really good. His monologue kept me invested the whole time, even though it was a monologue. Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. I really liked him basically. Well, yeah, the TVA is a sham, but it's the lesser of the evils kind of thing of being like, well, you know, yeah, you're all right. Yeah, you're right. It's a big load of dookie. There's nothing to, it's all BS. And I really liked his kind of, I don't know. I think you could just feel in him the morbid curiosity of, would he actually make it back there again? Would he be again the one who remains or whatever? You know what I mean? And I think, I thought, as there is some questions I have just like lore wise, as far as like how he, like, was Thanos ever aware of this level of reality? And would the time stone not have access to it, being the time stone? Or like, is this, there's still some questions for me as just far as like, where does this plane of reality exist? And I don't know. I guess I'm still interested to see exactly what Kang's abilities are. Kind of who he is as a, I mean, like Thanos, I feel like had a very defined, mission. And, he was kind of just like a giant strong dude, but then the Infinity Stones kind of became his power set. I guess I'm still wondering, like, what kind of villain are we getting in Kang? You know what I mean? And like exactly what will be, and again, it's going to depend on the different version of reality I guess we get him from. But overall, I think it was great. And I think I liked how they set up, I guess, his death. I liked the way that they made it like a conflict between Loki and Sylvie. I liked that there was conflict there. And I think it makes sense to me that Loki, having survived but not survived the Infinity War, is more wary of a threat than maybe Sylvie is, who has lived her whole life just hopping from one apocalypse to the next.
Yeah.
So it made sense to me that how that all played out.
No, well, she has we'll back up here in a second, but what you're referencing right now is her decision, like, I'm not you. Mm-hmm. And in her eyes, this is her life's mission. And I think after she does kill He Who Remains, there is this moment of unsatisfaction.
Yes.
On her eyes, like this didn't give me what I wanted. Of course, that seems like it's always the outcome.
The moral of the revenge story. Yeah.
Yeah, always pretty much. But it is interesting because we do feel like Loki did reach his pinnacle of his arc in the previous episode, and this is him actually functioning as that new character.
Yeah.
It's him saying, hey, like him taking like a more practical approach to things and also caring about the well-being of not just himself.
Yeah, he's not just thinking about himself. Absolutely. And I mean, obviously we're getting a season 2, which was a great little surprise at the end of the episode. But I do wonder where exactly we go with his character next a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I especially wonder when season 2 is coming out and where it fits into this timeline. I guess Loki can exist outside of time now. So I guess they could just make it come out whenever and it can be whenever. Yeah. But yeah, no, I liked the conflict between them two. I liked how she pushed him through the thing. It was a nice little one-liner. I'm not you, push you through the doorway.
It was the best action scene I think we've got all season. It was actually well choreographed.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're right.
It was, for the most part, it was shot well. And because also, and here's a big reason why, is because there's emotional stakes in the actual fight in which all the other ones don't have any emotional stakes.
Yes, and I thought it wasn't like they were fighting each other to the death either. It was kind of like a battle mixed with the word battle. Yeah. So it was like good choreography with these nice pauses where they kind of dialogue back and forth.
Which is what all action should be. Action should be informing character always. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But no, it's I thought that was really well done. And I think the interesting thing in this moment too, before he dies, is the moment in which he doesn't know what's going to happen next. And so it kind of brings up this, he's obviously the puppet, and it really appears for according to him, that he has manipulated everything, even Avengers Endgame. He wanted the Avengers to go back in time for this Loki to get the Power Star Space Stone. I think it's the Space Stone, to leave for all this stuff. So it explains why Cap wasn't pruned from going from the previous timeline and all this kind of stuff. It
explains. Remember they said that was supposed to happen, right? Yes. Explains. Well, that means just because he wanted it to. That's now we know what the prime timeline is. It's the timeline that Kang was directing.
Right. Yes, he is the director of this of the first 22 movies. You're right.
Yeah.
He is that like omnipresent figure that we talk about when we're talking about movies. But so he's doing that, and then there's that moment where he doesn't know anymore, and it is this. I mean, I think that was really well done. How it pushes in on him, it pushes out on him, and there's this genuine curiosity and like a little bit of fear, but like, because like he knows it can only go two ways, and in either way he wins, but there's still like that fear in him a little bit of not knowing what's going to happen for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah, I agree, because it felt like up to that point he'd been kind of stalling them just to get to that point. It was like he doesn't care whether they kill him or not, but he at least doesn't want them to kill him until he gets to that point, because he's just excited to experience, the novelty. Right. But I was like, why doesn't he know? Does he just choose not to know?
Well, I think it's because if you're going to create a moment of choice, then you have to also alleviate yourself from that knowing. If
we're getting into some time paradox levels of like kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it gets complicated, his power set for sure, but I've thought a lot about this. So I think it's if you want the there to be two outcomes. And you've went through all the options of people that could run the TVA and X, Y, and Z, and you've manipulated where it either has to happen where they choose it and we keep going in this way, or they don't choose it and then my variants will fight each other, and one of me or the same version of me will end back up here again.
Well, I mean, it's almost that thing of like, I mean, whoever remains is technically he who remains. It's the last one fighting, technically.
Yeah, you get complicated because and what's interesting though too is this kind of teased this up too, is that before the moment where he doesn't remember anything, the timeline is already starting to branch.
Yeah,
because there is this moment of like it's happening before we get to that critical moment, because Loki and Sylvie are making choices in their head while he's doing his monologue. So it's starting to branch the timeline, and it also creates a moment of tension, of course, and a time like a ticking clock. But I think it's also a sign that he doesn't have full control, or not even full control. He is fixing to give up his agency of like control and give them choice.
Yeah, it's almost like a choosing of. I guess it's almost like he's choosing to deprive himself of information to have a moment.
Yeah, to have a moment to either to repeat the moment. I mean, like, he's gonna either way. He's gonna end up in the same spot. So, and he thinks that, of course, in a classic villain way, and it seems like this is like a very benevolent actual ruler. Like, obviously, he's pruning timelines and things like that, but it actually seems like this is like the lesser of all the other Kangs.
Well, it's not a Kang who's like actively ruling the universe, at least at like some sort of dictatorship. Maybe, I mean, he's kind of more the puppet master. He's the puppet. He's the behind the scenes, which he claim. Does he claim to be the original Kang? Is that what he claims?
Well, he is the one. He who remains is the one who, in his story, where he found other
in some year in 3000 or whatever the year was.
That version, yeah. So
okay.
But
so he's the one that theoretically, and that's the weird thing too. It's like, okay, this Kang actually was born thousands of years in the future of the current MCU timeline,
right?
But because he's ascended to this level that's outside of time, he's in every time.
Yeah, basically. And theoretically, they would all be doing it at the same time and meeting each other in X, Y, and Z. It starts getting very interesting and complicated. Now, I said he's not a bad guy. Of course, here's the ultimate thing: he's not a good guy, because he was obviously taken away from everybody, even though he thinks it's the right choice. And the ultimate good outcome would be that we have a multiverse that's ever branching, that doesn't have other multiverses trying to consume other multiverses.
Right. Another multiverse war.
Yeah, so it's
Right.
basically a universe without Kang, and until the next Kang. So
Right.
So it seems like So obviously he is a bad guy. It just like kind of like Loki, he's the lesser of all evils at the moment. But of course, I think the Avengers will probably take care of the rest of the Kangs. What is cool about having multiple Kangs that you can have Kang the Conqueror, which I think will be the final version.
Yeah.
And then you can have, like Avengers has the Chitauri. They have Loki's the leader, Chitauri is the bad guy. They have Ultron. They have Ultron as the bad guy, and Ultron puppets as the cannon fodder. Same thing for Endgame. So now you can have Kang the Conqueror as the bad guy, and multiple variant Kangs as all his minions.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, I would assume that some of the Kangs are like heroic, good, right? I mean, if there's infinite Kangs, right, there's got to be at least one that's a good guy, and I wouldn't be surprised if that has to play into how they defeat him. Exactly. I mean, what if one of the Kangs is Captain America or something like crazy like that, or is a super? I mean, I don't know if it can work like that, but
that's definitely the key. Then, to me, that is the key now. Narratively, is like
defeat him.
There has to be a good Kang, and this Kang will know how to basically wipe Kangs from existence, and you'll love him as a character.
He'll have to sacrifice himself. Yeah.
That's it.
That does seem the obvious way to resolve it in the end.
It seems like a way.
It's like you have to defeat him with a time paradox in some way, or some kind of loophole kind of situation like that.
But it is really exciting seeing obviously whenever he dies. And
the branches,
because then you're like, there it is, baby. You're like, officially, Tobey Maguire is back into the
I know,
Ghost Rider, Johnny Storm, Chris Evans. Like you're like, that's it. That's how we explain it.
And I'll be honest. What If show, which is next, right? That comes out in August, right? It
comes out a couple.
That got way more exciting to me, just because it's like, wait, not only are these like kind of anthology. I mean, these are basically alternate realities that now exist.
These are
that we're
seeing.
Canon. And
did you see the news that dropped today?
I don't know what it is.
Potentially,
yes, Peggy Carter or Captain Britain, or is she Captain Britain?
Yes, Haley Atwell potentially being in Doctor Strange 2 as the character from What If.
That seems like such an why wouldn't they do that?
And she would, because she always says yes to everything, basically. So.
And that's a fun character. I mean, even just a little bit we see of in What If, I'm like, oh, she's fucking awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to see her. Yeah.
And it's one of those things, like, it's such a simple thing, is like this What If show, which they've already announced will have multiple seasons, is basically,
I didn't know that. That's cool.
It's all canon. Like, this is all canon.
Yes. And at first, I mean, I guess it makes so much sense, even if I had thought about, we're heading into multiverse level things. Of course it's canon, but I didn't think that it would be, just because it's cartoon. It's animated.
No, there was a disconnect there for me too. Like, I kind of kept thinking like this could be possible, but now it was just one of those things like I needed that scene to make it okay. This is officially real.
And honestly, you could even go so far as to these versions of reality are a cartoon. You know what I mean? It could almost be like you could, but either way, it's like now we can pull from any of these established realities in What If. For any of the movie, like any of the characters, anything can be represented there.
Well, there is a Guardians of the Multiverse, like marketing.
Well, it's like they're the Avengers, right? Instead of the
multiverse,
instead of the Avengers, or okay,
it's kind of like different people from different multiverses combining, and that could totally be a movie. Guardians of the Multiverse. Yes.
Well, and you got to think. I mean, you would have to assume that every movie, especially the ones that are a couple years off, like not even like Guardians 3. They're going to tie heavily into the multiverse plot. I mean, they just, I don't see them how they can't. And so, I mean, even like Thor, Love and Thunder, which the Guardians are in, you know what I mean? Like there's going to be lots of opportunities to just play with a lot of different versions of characters and all this kind of stuff, that it's just kind of like, if anything can upstage the Infinity Gauntlet. If anything can do it, it's this. It is kind of how I feel. Like, if anything can do it, it's Andrew Garfield standing next to Tobey Maguire, standing next to Tom Holland, in 3 different Spidey suits. And you know what I mean? Like that's what can actually make this. And I think that's just why it's so exciting, because it just feels like, I mean, I don't see how there's got to be at least a 50% chance we get Hugh Jackman Wolverine back, and Sir Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen back in their roles. Like even if it's a Flash scene or just like a short, it just seems like, I don't know, all the ideas, all the things that we were talking about in WandaVision of like, oh, but what if this or what if that, actually seem much more possible now, I think. And again, that's almost why like, well, I want to go rewatch WandaVision because I'll feel less cheated out of some of these results because I know what's coming, I guess. And in the end, it'll be like, wow, this was a great long buildup. I mean, they took, at this point, they've released 2 more theatrical movies and 3 full television series before they've officially opened up the multiverse, right? But they've been hinting at it every step of the way. I mean, other than Black Widow. Black Widow had nothing to do with it. Really. But every other one of them is like opening up, is playing on this and building it up and up and up. Yeah. It's exciting. I mean, there's
a lot of exciting things there. I got some other things I want to throw at you, just please. Questions I have for you. But before we do that, I do want to hear from our good friends, Dylan and Ronnie from the I Miss You Man podcast. They are 2 friends from high school who have come together to talk about anything they want to talk about, comics, movies, TVs, and again, whatever else they want to talk about. It sounds like our podcast. But it's not. But it's not.
We're actually not those guys. We're not moonlighting as a different podcast with alternate identities, deep faking ourselves. We're not.
But anyway, here's a small little preview of them, and here's a listen.
I miss you, man. Do I miss you? I miss you, man. I miss you, man. Do I miss you?
This is I Miss You Man. It's a podcast that actually came from a dream. Dylan, tell me about it.
Lonnie, call me Martin Luther King because I did have a dream. And the dream was that we had a podcast together and it was called I Miss You Man because we miss each other.
That's exactly right. We're friends from high school, from all the way back there, and we don't see each other as much as we really want to. And this dream that Dylan had, I thought it was the best idea I've ever heard.
It's up there.
It's up there. And now, here it is. It's real. This is the podcast of your dreams.
Making dreams reality, Lonnie. I love it.
Dylan, what do we do every week on this podcast?
Well, basically, we take turns hosting, pretty much, a topic.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be anything. Whether that be comics, movies, TV, cities, landscapes, what have you, Lonnie. And we try to entertain the other one as much as possible and brighten their week.
That sounds like a great podcast.
I'd listen.
I definitely would.
Hell yeah.
Well, that's what you got coming up for I Miss You Man.
I miss you, man. Do I miss you? I miss you, man. I miss you, man. Do I miss you?
And we're back. And of course, if you haven't, check out the I Miss You Man podcast on all podcast services. Give Dylan and Ronnie a subscribe, and they'd love to have your ears. I'd love to have your ears. Okay, so let's talk about the multiverse here. So of course, we know, yes, you're right. There has been 3 TV shows, of course, and also there will be some more movies coming out. So we know Shang-Chi is coming out. I don't think Shang-Chi will be evolved too much with the multiverse. The Eternals, I don't think either it feels like a generational story, not a multiverse story, because if we do see flashes of like these other characters' lives, and I fully suspect that's just one long, I'm 4,000-year-old.
I figured that was like almost backstory to wherever we're going to go, wherever the main plot's going to be. But I think maybe it was Travis that pointed out, like, there's that line in the trailer that's like, we've never revealed ourselves until now. That, I mean, it's got to play into the multiverse. I mean, that could just be the multiverse splitting open in some way, right? Like,
yeah, I mean,
I'm not sold on that being what it is.
Well, the bad guys in Eternals are called the Deviants, and
that sounds like a different name for variant.
It does. So
or slightly, yeah.
Well, they don't look human at all. And so I wondered, they could be multiversal villains. They could be something that could tie into this. And it could be the reason why they're not operating anymore, or they are operating now as the Eternals. But then we have the big one, which this is the first big tee up, which is Spider-Man No Way Home, and we know Doctor Strange has a cameo in it, and of course we know that there will be.
Is that confirmed? The Doctor Strange cameo?
Yeah, he's got a part. He's got a big part in it.
I didn't realize that was completely confirmed. Is Tom Holland confirmed for Doctor Strange?
We don't know that.
Is he in that? Okay.
And here's what's interesting.
Sorry, one thing I wanted to say about Eternals. I just thought, the Eternals could theoretically just be its own different version of Earth.
It could be.
That doesn't have the other heroes. That just has.
Well, they do
those Eternals.
Well,
they do mention they're
going to run the Avengers now.
That's true.
Like
okay, well that theory is wasted.
Who's going to run the Avengers now?
It's okay.
And I'm like, Nick, maybe you could do it. It's just an awful line. Anyway. No. So we have Spider-Man No Way Home. Whenever they did the deal with Sony, they had contracted up until this point one more solo film with the MCU, and then also a MCU movie with a Tom Holland appearance. And we don't know what that movie is yet. And it could be Doctor Strange.
You'd think they would want to save that for an Avengers film, but also, surely Sony wouldn't pull the plug on Tom Holland and Spider-Man.
I mean, they did once, but
yeah, and they got buried in shit from the fan base. I just wonder. I mean, I guess they can always. I mean, and that time it did kind of feel like maybe a negotiating tactic.
Well, here's the thing: is that I don't think they. I think it's less likely now because now that Marvel has gotten to do this third movie. And basically, they have now given Sony. Here is the
Vulture.
reason why. Well, no. Here's the reason why Mobius and Venom are in their own universe because it's different.
Right,
than
exactly.
And
why Vulture can be in the Mobius movie.
It's a variant universe, basically.
Morbius, not Mobius.
It's like, yeah, it gets complicated, but I mean, I guarantee if it keeps going, I think Tom Holland will be Spider-Man for a very long time. Tom Holland will appear in a Venom movie.
They're going to have to age up Peter Parker at some point, though.
Well, I think
at some point he's going to start growing facial hair.
I think this next one is kind of like the first step in that because they're changing his hairdo to make him more mature. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, he's looking a little older. That's what I mean. I like Spider-Man as a kid. That's fine, but I love Spider-Man as a man.
Well, it's just that thing of you can't keep him as a kid forever with the same actor.
Well, yeah, exactly. And
his voice changed a lot. I remember them talking about that between Homecoming and or was it maybe between Civil War and Homecoming, and they had to kind of do slightly have him try to talk a little higher or something.
Yeah,
because he was 16 at Civil War or something. He was super young.
He was young. And the thing is, now the third movie is introducing Tom Holland. What we think we're pretty sure we know Tom Holland or Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, and so we're going to get we're going back to showing older Spider-Man now. So it will be okay when Tom Holland ages in the next one. Like the whole thing is different, but now they're celebrating the old.
Yeah.
So.
And I wonder, Tobey Maguire kind of has a little bit of a baby face. I feel like you can age him down pretty easily.
You can. But I think he'll be aged.
But I kind of want him to be the oldest Peter Parker. The one that's been doing this the longest and kind of grizzled and maybe a little jaded. Maybe
the last thing we saw with him was
Mary Jane dead.
Was with him and Mary Jane kind of starting to rekindle their romance because he hit her in a bar in Spider-Man 3. So it's like them.
Yeah, I remember that. And then Gwen Stacy dies, right? She dies in that.
She didn't die.
No, she didn't die in Spider-Man 3. No. It's been a while since I've seen that, and I'm trying to keep it that way.
But I could see Tom Holland's appearance happening in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness because that's the movie where you want to show all the crazy alternate cameos. You want to see,
Yeah, you got to. That's when they
Jordan.
Rip the lid off the multiverse and really just put it on display. It's the
Michael
multiverse
B.
of madness.
Jordan. Yeah, it's almost like it's almost.
It's in the name.
Well, it's almost sad that you don't. Maybe we will, but you don't have Iron Man. How do you not have Tony Stark appear as an alternate, or at least Tom Cruise as Iron Man, that was originally cast or originally rumored?
That would be really just just for a moment, even if it's almost like we had when we had Matt Damon as fake Loki or whatever he was in Ragnarok, in the play, just a little cameo like that would be wonderful. Even just opening doors are oh, not that one, just that's all you need just to play some fan service and have fun.
And and there's a world where you have. Again, in Secret Wars, you have Tom Cruise come back in a larger capacity as Iron Man, and then you have Robert Downey Jr. come back. I could
see him doing that too, just because the MCU is the king of the box office, and he's the king of the action movie, and the fact that he's not been in one is almost a little weird at this point. I feel
it was very heavily rumored that he would be Hal Jordan in the Green Lantern movie. But
he's getting old. That's
he
the
is
thing.
getting old. I mean, I don't really want him as Hal Jordan, and the reason why they obviously do that is because of Top Gun. But Christopher McQuarrie, who's the director of these last few Mission Impossible movies, I think he had a pitch for a Green Lantern movie and or a Man of Steel movie with Henry Cavill, and they passed on him. Which I'm like, what? You want?
Yeah.
But anyway, that's another conversation with the DC universe. But no, it is weird that that Tom Cruise hasn't done it, and I think part of it is because he's waiting for a big role. And
yeah, I mean, you can't. Tom Cruise probably wouldn't be okay with a cameo, as an only thing he did. I mean, I'm sure he'd want to be promised like, oh, but you'll come back later as in this or whatever.
I still keep thinking for some reason that since Sam Raimi is directing this, we're going to see Tobey Maguire also in this Doctor Strange movie. Like I don't see a world where Sam doesn't have like a 5-minute sequel to Spider-Man 3. You know what I'm saying? Like,
or fixes it somehow. Maybe Doctor Strange goes back in time and fixes
totally
the
a moment
plot,
where he
slaps the dancing Tobey Maguire and like, what the fuck are you doing in this black outfit? You emo piece of shit.
Maybe, I don't know, but
go change your clothes and quit pulling this bullshit.
Him that moment as a director, and like again, I don't know. This movie's gonna have to be expensive, but.
Yeah.
Let me look. I think Thor: Love and Thunder is after Multiverse of Madness. I could be wrong here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. I thought it was No Way Home, and then Multiverse, isn't it? Or no, Shang-Chi. No, Shang-Chi's this fall.
Here we go. Phase 4. Okay, no. So Multiverse is before Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
And then we have Ant-Man 3. So let's work it down. Spider-Man this fall. Doctor Strange in March. Thor.
That's
in
so
May.
soon.
It is so soon. Black Panther in July, the Marvels in November, Ant-Man in 2020.
Yeah.
Guardians in 2023. And Fantastic Four is right now the last movie announced, which will probably be fall of 2023.
I could see that end up being like the Avengers moment. Really make that a really. I mean, the danger is you've already got an ensemble cast for a solo Fantastic Four movie that you're going to have to share screen time with and really develop each character. So I don't necessarily know if you're going to team them up with another ensemble in their first outing.
But Fantastic Four is super notable in the fact that they do a lot of multiverse stuff. Like,
well, and Doctor Doom is obviously their classic villain, and he is tied. Like, isn't Kang like in one version like a descendant of Doom, or like has some sort of like connection to Doom in the comics, or they've worked together? They've been, they have a lot of shared arcs, and
there's
so
a lot of shared stuff there for sure. And I mean,
what if they make Doctor Doom a Kang variant? I mean, I don't know. Like,
it wouldn't surprise me. And the thing about Doctor Doom, I consider Doctor Doom probably, if not the top 3 villains of all time in Marvel.
Yeah.
Just because he's cool and he's just a badass.
Yeah.
And like he's a big gun. Like he could be phase 5 villain.
He could be a Thanos level threat.
100%. I think he's a better villain than Thanos. I mean, it gets hard because you're like, how many times can you how
many times can you threaten reality or like kill everyone?
Yeah, I mean,
whatever?
it gets, it is getting more difficult, but
it is. I mean, and that is the nice thing of the multiverse war is that there's novelty just in how it is set up. What I mean? It's not just one bad guy trying to wipe out half the planet. It's like, characters fighting themselves, or there's just a lot more things dynamic.
There is, and here's the thing I want to say real quick is, it's hard for me to imagine because we're humans and we can only comprehend so much what the next thing after the multiverse will be.
Yeah.
So I want to pose this question, and we'll probably, we could talk about multiverse and all these different theories forever. It's literally endless possibilities.
Yes.
But I do want to ask you this: do you think that once we get to Secret Wars, which I'm telling you is inevitable, once we get to that,
and Secret Wars is multiverse?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
it's typically it's been different things, but it's traditionally multiple versions of multiple heroes fighting each other.
Okay.
In the last one, Doctor Doom was the big bad. Here's the big thing. Do you think that whatever the outcome of Secret Wars will be, it will basically be a reboot of the entire universe with like a new Iron Man actor, basically like resetting the stage again, like basically back to phase 1? Or do you think that we will basically have like what a DC is doing? We'll have like a Joker movie. We'll have this that are unrelated to each other.
Are we thinking like this is 10 years from now, basically?
Yeah, I mean,
what was the Infinity Gauntlet was a 10-year ordeal.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I'm thinking, and this will be like there will be probably 2 to 3 times more content in these second 10 years and the first 10 years. I mean, we
So it
already
could be
have
more
a
like
lot.
15. I mean, I could see it them stretching it a little
It
bit
could
longer.
be. And the reason why I'm even posing this on top of this question is Kevin Feige. I doubt any one person will do the same thing forever, and he's
Right.
got to be looking at. Even if he's having the time of his life, he has to also be thinking, I want to go out on top. And I could see Secret Wars
Well,
being a 25-year adventure in the biggest
like the
box office.
25-year anniversary,
I mean,
and Kevin Feige passes the torch.
It's almost a third of most people's lives, or what's even more. And so I could see him like.
I mean, at that point, they would have broken every possible record. For every box office thing.
They do it. Sure. I mean, they're still the highest franchise right now with every dollar that's added. They're the record.
Well, and I wonder if he would just kind of go one more rank up the ladder and be like the head of Disney production or Disney create, like basically be the person that decides what movies Disney makes.
Star Wars movies, so we know that he's working with that. So we know that he
has interest outside of
He's got other interests, and I mean, I can see a world where I work on Marvel for 200 years. But
sure,
I just think that there even at a point for me, like, you know what, I want to go work on DC now. You know what I mean? There's a moment. So
yeah, once you've dominated it, and especially I think again, it's like I think there will be kind of an accomplishment in like successfully transitioning from Gen 1 Avengers to Gen 2, basically. Once we kind of have accepted it, if we can feel like we've felt about Cap and Iron Man, about the people that replace those, and they do the work and make them compelling characters and give them good arcs, and we get to this 25 and it's like, damn, like I don't even know who's my favorite Iron Man or something like that. I think that will be kind of like they've kind of reached. Where do they go after that? And it could be like, I mean, I could see, if they've done that for 25 years, they could take a 5-year break or something and be like, we'll be back in 5 years with some new ideas or something. I mean,
I would love it if they did, but then you look at stockholders and they're like, there's no Disney Plus Marvel shows for 5 years.
Sure. No. Yeah. But I mean, at that point they might have like 15 Disney Plus Star Wars shows. I don't know.
You're very right.
Or at that point they may have bought DC.
In a perfect world, these things would have an ending. But I mean, these movies do replicate these movies do mirror the comics in a lot of ways, in that there are no endings, and it's just another chapter sort of thing. I
mean, they've obviously planted seeds for the young Avengers, and maybe that's just going to be I could honestly see that end up being like a young adult Disney Plus show, kind of aimed at teenagers, maybe. But at some point that's going to come into play, and how long are we going to stick with those characters? I mean, Wiccan and Speed were like 12-ish or 10-ish in WandaVision, but we're probably not going to see those actors for another 5 years or something.
Right.
And will they just use them aged up and have aged up versions, or will they recast? I don't know. Yeah. But
here's another thing, since we're just talking about it. I mean, they're adding a lot of characters really fast. Like, here's the top of my head: Lady Thor, Miss Marvel, Captain Rambo as Photon, She-Hulk, Moon Knight, Blade, and then you have the other core, basically legacy Avengers.
Sylvie is a new one. I think
sure. So it's like in Shang-Chi, the Eternals. So when you get to these crossover movies, how are they going to like? I thought it was a miracle that they did it in Infinity War as well as they did.
Oh no, that was the biggest. I remember going into that theater just being blown away about how they managed the stars. Yeah, and it was just perfect.
And their way of focusing it back on these core people was obviously to eliminate everybody, which is super smart.
It was.
And then you of course get to live with these characters you started at the beginning one last time together, which is obviously a big deal. Yes. But again, it starts getting like, I would love to be in the writing room figuring this out, but also it would be like,
it's daunting.
Fuck,
Yeah. No, it's gonna take the same people figuring out like, how do we tell the most compelling story with all of these characters in our backyard, and I think it will take. I think we are going to see more Civil War type things where we're getting basically Avengers 0.5 movies. where it's a obviously Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is that already. I would argue Thor Love and Thunder is that already, with Guardians and Lady Thor in that. And I'm assuming Guardians, theoretically Guardians could just be there for the setup and like dropping Thor off somewhere and then deucing. I would assume maybe there's a little more involved with them. For one, just because of the Thor Star-Lord chemistry was just still one of the best parts of the Infinity War movie. Just that first interaction is just fucking
if
hilarious.
Guardians is in more than the first act. I'd be really surprised.
Yeah, maybe you're right. But
hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. But anyway, I feel like Multiverse of Madness, we know Scarlet Witch is in that, but who knows? Maybe she's the villain still. I don't know. But it feels like we're going to get these team up or half team up movies in these single named movies. Like Doctor Strange movie is going to have probably Spider-Man, definitely Scarlet Witch, maybe others. There's no telling who they could have in that movie. I could definitely see
it's such a big thing. It feels like if you don't have other versions of characters or previous actors reprising their roles in the Multiverse of Madness, it feels like the universe. It feels like the monetary capital thing of Disney is not servicing what would actually be happening.
Yeah, no, you're right. They need to have some surprises and big hitters in that, even in cameo type roles.
Yeah, to service the narrative of the universe, it has to.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like we've been skating around it with WandaVision and Loki. Like Loki is a prime time to show different variants of cool characters, but it feels like they were just, let's just do, it's cheaper.
And yeah, and again, I don't know what the budget per episode was, but a lot of that had to go to visual effects, and they had some Owen Wilson probably wasn't that cheap. I'm sure Tom Hiddleston's making a pretty penny at this point with the Loki career. they're bringing him back for season 2, and I was just honestly a little surprised that Tom Hiddleston was down for another season, just because his stocks keep seeming to rise to me. So.
Yeah, I was totally I was surprised that was the stinger, because we've never had a stinker like that. But it was totally like, yes, it's gonna happen. My only request is that it's not called Loki season 2 like the Mandalorian does. I hope it's called Loki and it's like a different name, Loki :
I think that's totally possible.
Master of Mischief or something. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I think to me doing that will make it easier to not digest, easier to visually represent the MCU chronologically.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's like the new Loki show. It won't be just. We'll have expectations of Sylvie, of Mobius having a strong role. Renslayer seems to be. Who knows? Renslayer could be the main antagonist of that,
or the ending of Loki. Renslayer was awful again. Worst.
Yeah, I agree. She wasn't that interesting. She came off a bit one note.
Even the whole thing about revealing Renslayer has multiple variants bad. Owen Wilson,
that was a weird way for me to do it. It just felt like just a strange way to do it.
It's just not very well written and stuff. And she's a good actress, but they're just not giving her a lot to work with.
I agree. And yeah, it'll be, she becomes like Kang's mistress, villainous, something like that. Like she's like his,
I don't know.
She has some sort of lore.
Comics. Yeah, in the comics,
is a powerful character in some extent.
Yeah. A big thing was the Planet of the Apes stinger, which was basically when Sylvie sent him sent him back to the TVA. She didn't send him to the Prime TVA, to Sacred Timeline TVA. She sent him a different thing,
which I would assume she didn't mean to.
Even, I think
the timeline was splitting already.
Exactly. That was a cool little thing. Like, okay, Loki's in a different multiverse or different verse.
Then this one just didn't have the time code; just had Kang.
It had Kang as the ruler. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
who knows? Again, it's like they've opened up a bottle of possibilities, and that's exciting. And I trust Marvel. I feel like they're probably going to do at least the main core story of this arc good. I'm sure there will be some movies that maybe miss the mark a bit. But I feel like they've earned my trust in terms of, like I said, how they're going to manage this, because it is a lot to manage. This is the kind of thing that could eventually jump the shark for Marvel, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like they could jump the shark pretty easily with all these multiverse things going on. And
question: do you think, since now we have Fox under the Disney umbrella, do you think we'll see the X-Men in Multiverse of Madness?
I still think that that's a huge potential, or even maybe just one of them or something. I mean, I don't know. I still think it depends on when we're getting the X-Men movie, when they're planning to introduce that. The thing is, because of the multiverse, they can literally choose to introduce them whenever, and they have a great reason for why they're called mutants and not just superheroes. You know what I mean? Like, because I feel like that was always a very gray difference in the comics that didn't, like, there was lots of people that just were on both, and they were like, which one are you though? Are you a mutant or are you not?
It does get weird for sure.
It does. And so, like, finding a very lore friendly, be like, oh yeah, in this universe we don't have superheroes, they just have mutants. That works. I think that'd be a very, to me, satisfactory way to reason why we haven't seen them up to this point. And I'll be like, because even with the Eternals, like, literally a line in the trailer is, we have never revealed ourselves up to this point. So they're having to justify why they've been AWOL with all this other shit going on. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, that's probably, that and Fantastic Four are two of the things I'm most excited about in terms of how they're going to do those world, because they're just great. They're great IPs. They're great characters, and there's great stories to be told with those. So
yeah, no, I'm most excited about, obviously, Spider-Man's number one, and then we have Doctor Strange and Thor. Like, to me, those are so close, and those are, I mean, Shang-Chi I do want to see, but to me, these other three feel like gangbusters.
I mean, Shang-Chi kind of feels like a classic origin story.
Yeah,
which I mean, Marvel's good at. I mean, they've done a lot of them, and hopefully it'll be one of the better ones. But yeah, I agree. It's like
these other three movies are ensemble films, so it's like these are like all Avengers,
and they're
4.1,
actively progressing the plot of the main shenanigans. So
yeah. That'd be cool. Daniel, how can our listeners write into us?
Listeners, you can write into us at bit.ly/241mail. There, you can let us know what you thought of the Loki finale. Were you satisfied with the answers we got? Are you excited for what's next? Do you have any theories that we're missing out on? This also feels like one of those shows that there's probably so many little Easter eggs that we are missing right now that will eventually pay off in some cool way. Like, who the fuck's Miss Minutes? And there was someone even showed us that picture, or I think Travis sent us that picture of, like, in Thor 1, Natalie Portman's wearing a shirt that looks awful lot like Miss Minutes on it. I'm not buying that it is. That sounds like a little revisionist history a little bit to me, but either way. I mean,
to your point right there, Kang does give her, because if Kang is controlling Miss Minutes, he does give Renslayer information on the beginning of time to point her to a direction for some reason.
Yeah, no, obviously Miss Minutes is like his little pawn.
Yeah.
I don't know. But what is she? Is she a computer? I don't know. Hologram? Doesn't seem like it. Yeah. So anyway, this show, did we miss anything? Are there any Easter eggs we didn't pick up on? Let us know. bit.ly/241mail, or leave a comment below.
Yeah. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that notification bell. That way you're up to date on all future episodes of Podcast 2 for 1. You can find us on all podcast services, iTunes, Spotify, all of them. There's other ones, SoundCloud, all kinds of shit. Check out the I Miss You Man podcast. And again, the YouTube is the best place to consume the content, youtube.com/241 Studios. We have other videos there, like 241 Collectors, 241 Backflash, that live on the channel, and we post pretty frequently. And we'd love to have your subscription or subscription.
We'd love to have your attention.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
In your views. Yeah.
Well, Daniel, it's very exciting. Again, I could literally talk forever about this subject because it's it's infinite possibilities. That's why.
Yeah. I have a tendency to rabbit hole sometimes, but this is just amplifying that, because it feels like this next in Gauntlet is the rabbit hole gauntlet almost. Yeah.
I think by the time March 25th hits, which is Doctor Strange 2, we'll have some clarity on some things happening. I
mean, I expect to get a lot of things. I mean, in No Way Home. I mean, No Way Home seems like Doctor Strange 1.5, kind of like So I expect to know a lot more about what's going on in the world and where we're headed after No Way Home.
Yeah, I think obviously WandaVision is tipping him off to the multiverse, and I think B, No Way Home is he'll probably come in, maybe get some pointers, help Peter out for a second, but then at the very end of it, he's like, something's not right here.
And go investigate it or something. Yeah.
And then he's going to go, and then of course, which also, here's another thing. Here we go again. WandaVision we all thought she was the catalyst for the multiverse, and
Yeah, exactly.
She maybe definitely like made things more unstable and created more timelines, but it's not her really. But
remember, we do know that she is what is it called?
Nexus event,
a Nexus person. She is the exact same across all the multiverses. We know that from that show. So we know that there aren't different versions of Wanda. There's just Wanda.
So that's
and
what
she's
that
the
means,
same across.
Person?
Yeah, that means she's like so powerful. She exists as one being across all versions of reality. And she has the ability to like manipulate them or do something with them. I think. Yeah, I have to rewatch it. I don't know.
Because I really like that explanation.
That is the explanation from the comics, and they have the Nexus word used all this time, and I'm pretty sure they maybe say that, but I think maybe that is maybe revealed in like the conversation with what's her name at the end, like the Agnes, Agatha. Is it Agnes or Agatha?
It's Agnes. Her name is originally Agnes.
Oh, her fake name is Agnes, and then okay. Yeah. So that is and that makes a lot of sense too. If it's like she's such a powerful being that and that's I think that same thing for Jean Grey and Phoenix. She's another Nexus character like that.
The Phoenix Force.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a few others, but she's obviously the one we've been introduced to as like she has multiversal powers. She has access to it in ways that other characters don't. So yeah, I think it reframes her, and again, it's almost like, if you didn't know who Mysterio was in Far From Home, you might have assumed we were starting with multiverse then. But I think most of us who just know that Mysterio is like this, like is a magician or like smoke and mirrors, that's his thing. Mm-hmm. We were all kind of assuming none of it was real. Catherine watched it the other day, and she didn't know who Mysterio was or didn't know who that character was, so she actually was surprised by the twist. But I think it's like we've kind of had this like, oh, is it the multiverse? No, not yet. Oh, is it the multiverse? No, not really, not yet. And then finally we're at this show, and it's like it's the multiverse, but then it recontextualizes all these other things we've watched up to this point. So
you may tell you something that's really cool.
I do.
Okay, how do you top Thor holding Mjolnir and Stormbreaker? Well, in the comics,
does he get a sword? In
the comics, there was a moment in time when they get basically God Thor or King Thor, and Wolverine is infused with the Phoenix Force, like at the end of time.
Wow!
And like I think Galactus or Null, who is the bad guy in Thor: Love and Thunder, they're coming or something, and basically I think Thor and Wolverine are fighting for whatever reason to kind of find out who's going to fight who. And basically Wolverine dies and gives Thor the Phoenix Force plus like the Necro. It's like, there's ways to top. It's crazy. This is
I'm getting like Dragon Ball Z flashbacks of all these characters morphing into one another.
Dude, I'm telling you. It gets insanely cool. And like, there's ways to do this stuff I'm super excited about. They do it.
Oh yeah, I know there is. I mean,
it gets cool.
Yeah.
I mean, the Necro Sword, which is Null's weapon, like it gets really cool, dude. Which actually has ties to Venom. So, anyway, yeah. No, it's Gore the God Butcher. Null is the Venom like king but bad guy, but Gore the God Butcher, who's in Thor: Love and Thunder,
is Christian Bale.
Sword, who is Christian Bale, which would be sad if it's only his one appearance and he dies.
Yeah, that just seems like his speed though, right? Like he's like, I've done the superhero protagonist thing. I'm gonna do the superhero antagonist
more than one movie, and it's sad because Gore is such a big, cool villain.
Well, I mean, who knows? He could. It's fucking multiverse, man. We could have
cool. I guess you have enough money.
We could have Gore Thor. You know what I mean? We could have Gore Thor.
Anyway, a lot of cool things that we keep going forever. Daniel, I appreciate talking to you, and of course, I think pretty soon we'll have Bruce back on to do a movie breakdown that's totally unrelated to the MCU. We've kind of caught up on MCU at the moment. We've been doing a lot of MCU lately.
Well, they've been doing a lot of themselves, so
that's true. But we'll be back for What If, and maybe we'll do some other things. That's different speeds, maybe some video game news, and some other things like that. But anyway, my name is Donovan Thompson.
I am Daniel Wingfield,
and we have spoken.